insurance, like any other product, is you get what you pay for. I would submit to you this, that if you were to take your spouse or partner out to dinner and you took them to a steak place, you're going to pay much more than if you take them to a fast food place, right? We all agree with that. If you buy a Mercedes, you're going to pay more than a Hyundai. We all align there. Somehow, some way, we've been lied to or manipulated in the insurance marketing that it's all the same and you just get what you pay for. Well, it's not true. You get what you pay for. And if you pay the cheapest, you probably have bought a legal contract that is full of exclusions, riders, like you were saying earlier, that doesn't cover some things. And you, the consumer, bought it. But again, you think it's all the same because in insurance, they just somehow, oh, it's all the same. It's just about rate. And then our customers or policyholders found out at claims time how horrible it is. And that's how our industry gets a bad name. Hey, good morning. This is Jeff Arnold. I am in the insurance technology space.
Excellent, excellent. And what exactly do you mean in insurance technology? Like, what does that mean?
Yeah, so basically our firm has created technology that helps beat the insurance companies by finding missing discounts or helping consumers pay less for all types of insurance.
Interesting. Is this commercial, auto, everything, or is it?
Yeah, yeah. As a matter of fact, kind of our tagline is everything from pets to jets.
Oh, well, I like it. I like it. Excellent. All right. So we'll skip over and kind of do the upbringing side of the story now. So this is one of the things we like to tell is, sort of the entrepreneurial journey, like where you started at and, how you got to where you are today. And then we'll jump into, some of the things that you're specifically working on. So we like to ask all of our guests the same question, and that is, what was your dinner table like growing up as a child?
Idyllic and wonderful. So my dinner table was hopefully a representative of all dinner tables in the late 60s and early 70s, because I am an aged man.
Uh-huh.
It was, I mean, my father, grandfather, great-grandfather, great-great-grandfather were all preachers, right? And so it was full of theology, full of the right thought, intentional kind of being. So it's a wonderful way to spend dinner, right?
Wow, wow. And so you came from a long lineage of you know, people that were spreading the gospel, spreading the word, I guess, right? What how come you didn't want to go down that path? Is there?
Yeah, I get asked this question all the time. I was not built for the pulpit. First, I cannot walk away from a good one-liner,
Yeah.
right? So,
I love it. I love it.
here's a real quick story, if I can bore your listeners
No,
with it,
no,
right?
please.
Because this is an absolute truth. Um, in the Kentucky, where I grew up originally, I live in Arizona now, but I grew up in Kentucky. Uh, when you finish preaching, my grandfather used to walk outside of the church and everyone would walk by and shake hands or whatever. And I would always have to stand beside him or right behind him because I was a troublesome little kid and they wanted to make sure they knew where I was, right? Front row, stand beside me when we go out. And this little old lady comes walking out at the end of the sermon. My grandfather just preached and she says, Reverend, do you know how to many mistakes you made in the prayer today? And me with my big mouth leans around the side of him and said, well, lady, he wasn't praying to you anyway. so, so I was not cut out to stand and deliver that kind of message. So just
That
kind
is
of a
funny.
funny
That is
story.
funny. What got you into the insurance space? I mean, was this something that you went to school for? Is this something you kind of fell into? What was the catalyst that got you into that area?
Yeah, I thought about this and had to be intentional about it because I've written 5 books, right?
Mhm.
I'm fortunate to have 4 of them bestsellers, and it's not a pitch for the books, but it ties into the question. Um, the industry called to me when I was 14 years old, standing on a hay bale in Western Kentucky, working on the tobacco and hay farms. And I'll dive a little deeper in that if you have a moment.
Mhm.
And so I'm standing with my best friend Chuck at the time, and we're in the middle of a hay field, and up drives this guy in a 4-door silver Buick with the windows up. This is important because it means he had air conditioning, right? This
Mhm.
is 1970s. He steps out of this 4-door Buick with a crisp white shirt and a tie on. And I asked my friend Chuck, hey, what's that guy do? And he said, insurance or something like that. Well, fast forward a decade, I had been in Hollywood doing theater and stand-up comedy and thought that's the route I wanted to go because I'd always been kind of a thespian in school.
Mhm.
And after being an abject, miserable failure, I came home to Tucson to visit my mom and had to get a job to eat, rent, pay gas, do whatever young men at 24 have to do. I answered an ad, as cliche as it sounds, for insurance salesman wanted. And so I fell into it, to answer your question directly. I just fell into it. And here we are 30 something years later.
Mhm.
It has helped fulfill any dreams I've had about success. It's challenged my leadership skills, my mathematical skills, every skill set, my detective skills. And it's really been a wonderful provider for my family. So a great career, but I happened to fall into it, is what I say. But after writing all the books, I think the seed was planted about a decade earlier, and it
Mhm.
germinated and grew and sprouted when it needed to.
Yeah, yeah, no, that makes sense. What were some of the some of the early challenges? You started working for someone? Did you ever create your own brokerage, or what was like that?
Yeah,
What was that path to starting your own thing?
to entrepreneurship. Yeah. And
Yeah.
so I worked for exactly 30 days, right? Just about 5 weeks for another firm. And then I decided, just the entrepreneurial bug in me, or being an actor, or whatever you think you can do it better. So I just started my own. And at the time, it was called Jeff Arnold Insurance, right? And I
Hmm.
just used to make if your listeners can remember the white pages, there used to be a big book that came out of the white
Hmm.
pages. And I used to dial, without exaggeration, 200 calls a day, every day, just going through the book, trying to get people to answer the phone to buy insurance, of all things, right? So here we are 30 years later. I've bought 40 plus insurance operations, ran two insurance companies, now run a technology firm. And so it's been a great journey. It's been a great challenge to the entrepreneurial spirit, right?
Hmm.
Because there are peaks that are really high and the highs are great, and there are valleys that are really low and make you question everything. And so, like any other career, it's been a wonderfully rewarding and fascinating journey. I'm not done yet, right? I'm
Yeah.
still a young man, a lot to go, and still a lot that I want to accomplish. So.
Yeah, that's very cool. Yeah, and I'm curious. You said that you were in theater and you're a thespian and that. I'm curious, did you ever take any improv type classes at all by chance?
Absolutely, and studied. I think that you did too, right?
I
For a while, yeah,
I did. Yeah. Yeah. I just
yeah.
I was curious because I really feel like pretty well any entrepreneur, salesperson, whatever it is, it's an invaluable skill to have, be able to just get the hell out of your mind, right? Like just be present and whatever happens and go along with it. So
I
would you
completely,
agree? Would you see the same?
absolutely, emphatically agree with you. And in fact, you talk about the dinner table earlier. That's what I challenged my kids around the dinner table. Is the couple things, right? Among many things, is your opinion of you is more important than anybody else's opinion of you. And if you can define and master your own stage presence, right? Be in that moment, on the scene, on the stage, pull people in, you can do anything
Mhm.
and seem like you know what you're doing,
Yeah, and
right?
it's
I mean,
and I love that. I love that mindset because that also has a, I guess, a personification of confidence too, right? Like you have to stand up and be okay with being in that present place, whatever you're doing, and having that confidence. And again, when you have that confidence to be able to be able to present yourself or present your ideas, people are going to follow you and recognize that you know what you're talking about and that. So yeah, that's
uh,
that's fantastic. I love it. I love it.
it's awesome. And one of the rewards of, pouring that knowledge into your children is, I have four, and three of them are out of high school now, and all of them spoke either at the graduation ceremony or at different times to the entire school. And I'm just bubbled with pride, like any parent would be, but just the way that they owned that stage and their
Mhm.
presence there in that microphone, you knew they took some of that away, right? And so it's like you were saying earlier, it's invaluable in any career choice to kind of go through that. Think on your feet really quick, that improv teaches you, right? Codify, memorialize, be intentional about what you're going to say, lean into it, master pause, right? All these are great thespian skill sets. So yeah.
Yeah, that's powerful stuff. I love that. Okay, so you bought and sold a number of, maybe you bought a number of insurance companies. What was, I guess, was that a move to be able to, scale yourself up quickly, or what was the thought process behind acquiring acquiring the business rather than, maybe opening up another office in that, in that particular area?
Yeah. So just for clarifications, two insurance companies and 40 plus insurance, what you would call brokerages or agencies, right? Over the years and consolidated them. And so there's a couple different ways to achieve growth in any business, right? There's organic growth, right? Which is, some would say more profitable, but also much more difficult. And the acquiring or aggregating just became easy for me in the early 2000s because I partnered with the bank who ultimately bought my firm. And so I had their balance sheet behind me to go and buy whoever we wanted, right? And well, who that was interested that we could buy. And it just made it really easy. And it was really easy to scale at that point because when you have a large balance sheet behind you, it's easier to get access to capital. But even the best balance sheets can be tested, as can be said by the bank, because in 2008, that same bank that I was using was a mortgage firm too, billions of dollars in 30 plus billion in originations went bye-bye in 2008 and 2009,
Wow.
part of the Great Recession, right? And so had to start over at 42 years old, which I don't recommend to anyone, right? But had done it once, figured we could do it again. And that's kind of what led us to the technology space we're in now.
Yeah, interesting. And I definitely want to dive into the technology side of things. So was this sort of a shift where you said, I want to do things differently this time, or was there a reason that you wanted to go down the technology space? Was it safer for some reason, or any thoughts there as to why you chose that particular direction?
Yeah, I've had a lot of introspection on this too. This question's a good question. I've always been kind of a nerd or a geek, right? Which we used to be. Geeks before the geeks inherited the earth. I was a geek, right? Before it was cool, right? And in several billion-dollar companies that I was fortunate to work in after I started the agency and sold, and then consulted stuff, and then along the way worked for multiple billion-dollar companies. I learned a lot. Got all my leadership skills stretched. And once, like anything, once it's stretched, you can never go back to who you were, right? But at all of them, or both of those companies, and another startup I was involved in, I always met a roadblock on the tech side. And by tech side, I usually mean by IT department or programming. They're always just like, I always felt like the redheaded stepchild. There's not enough resources to get you what you want. And so I was very intentional about, all right, I'm going to do it on my own, and we're going to get the best programmers, the best full stack developers, the best tech people we can get. And I'm going to drive this bus. I'm not going to have the brakes pumped on me and do it their way. And so it's really helped because I knew the insurance space and I knew what I wanted to do in tech. I just never had command over the direction of that. And it's been really cathartic. It's been wonderful. My little firm, RIGHTSURE, is the most awarded firm in insurance of this decade, right? Every major publication in insurance has given us an award for best employer or best startup or best tech or everything. Again, it's a little chest thumping, but it feels good to have the brakes pumped on me all the time and not get what I wanted, to go out on my own again, and then all of a sudden receive all these awards and accolades. It validates that your belief was right and your ideas were good. So
Yeah, and when you went and made that leap, like you mentioned a couple of times now that your leadership ability was challenged, and once you're stretched that way, you can't go back to being or looking at things the way that you used to. And you mentioned that you're a nerd or a geek. Did you have a coding background at that point, or was this something that you just jumped in and figured out as you went?
no, just a question to coding, but I knew that there are people much smarter than me in every facet, right? Be it finance, be it marketing, be it management, be it leadership, be it coding. Align yourself with those people and get out of the way, right? So if you're a great leader, you can give direction and vision and cast a vision and get everyone marshaled together to on the same page. And coders might not want to be vision casters, and finance people might not want to stand in front of a mic. Those are places I'm very comfortable at, but I don't know the other. And I don't want to learn it, right? And other people are much smarter, so adapt their skills and leverage their skill sets, give them a part of the equity, and let's all grow together.
Yeah. And how would you, again, making that leap into an area that you into an industry, a vertical that you may not necessarily know anything about, what was your approach? Like you mentioned, you obviously find a person who knows more about it or is an expert, but how do you know that you found the right expert when you were walking down that path? Because again, like you could go on Upwork or anything like that, and I'm sure you'll get 200 replies, but
Yeah.
what was your process on weeding out and finding that right person? Maybe it didn't happen right away. Maybe you had to go through a couple of people in order to be able to get to the right point. But I guess what was your process to be able to get that all off the
Yeah,
ground?
quite candidly, I don't think I've achieved it yet, right? I mean, you've seen, if you can visualize, or your listeners can visualize, that path to success, right? That cartoon, that it's not a straight line, it's a squiggly line, it goes 15 different ways. So yes, to validate what you said earlier, I've used Upwork, I've used Fiverr, I've used all these places that you can outsource code or buy code, and then it changed my mind. And so I don't believe we've arrived at our final destination yet. I get set back every day, like everyone else, but you got to get up, put your feet on the ground, and charge forward every day. I feel like we're headed in the right direction, but I'm also keenly very aware that there are more detours, more free falls, right, along the way. Anytime you put an idea out into the universe is going to challenge you to make sure, A, you're committed to it, B, to prove that you might be wrong somehow. And you have to lean in and fight that sometimes, right? So we're not where I want to be yet. And my industry, like any other industry, I don't mean this derogatorily, this is just how I say it as a man of my age, some kid somewhere is sitting in his kid's basement and tinkering with our business model and your business model, and they're going to disrupt the entire world, right? And so I'm always trying to get in touch with these people who aren't encumbered by the "it can't be done that way" thing. They're just going to come and do it. And so I lay awake thinking about those kids, for lack of a better word, all the time, right? Trying to stay connected.
Yeah. No, I love that. So what would you say when you decided I'm going to go this tech route, what were some of the challenges that you were trying to overcome?
Yeah, a big part of it is me. The problem is me, right? Like, I believe there to be an easy button for all this because there's a tech solution to everything, right? When in fact, Matt, apparently no easy button exists, and it's sometimes thousands, tens of thousands, 100,000 lines of code to make it look the way you want, and that moves very slow for me, right? I move way too fast, so that's been a big challenge. Another real big setback for me, because being a thespian and in theater, I did not possess the financial skill set, the financial discipline, the really what was needed around the balance sheet and financial reporting and pitching to investors. I really lacked that. Like, you can be very confident on the stage, but you have to know your numbers and dive deep. And so, in my 40s, I went back to school just for finance, right? I feel like I had a good grasp of vision and leadership and motivating people, but very deficient in finance and very deficient in just different skill sets, just like Excel, right? For folks like me who didn't grow up using it so much. So I had to go teach myself that stuff or enroll in classes. And so along the way, I've just tried to challenge myself and say, what are you deficient in? What do you struggle in? And go learn that. I'm not trying to be a master of all things, but I need to be in touch or aware of the functionality of how finance integrates with marketing, integrates with technology, integrates with leadership, integrates with the balance sheet. And that takes time or intentional learning. And that's been the biggest thing for me, is to Sometimes I'm the oldest man on these Zoom calls or in these classes, but I'm like, I don't care.
Yeah, I
Because
no, and
it's
I
totally,
love that you have the the self-awareness to know, where you do lack, where you are struggling, because I think there's a lot of people that, they just jump. Well, I mean, there's something to be said about just jumping in and sort of figuring it out, but knowing that, hey, there's something here that I need to, get better on. That's a huge skill set that I think a lot of people are lacking. So when you were looking at what you wanted to do in technology, what were the things that you were trying to impact with that technology? Like, was there a blocker? Was there something that you felt like was missing? Like you mentioned the easy button. I think of insurance, and we'll get into some of the things that we do within insurance and that, but I think of insurance and it's, confusing, and there's all kinds of different riders and policies, and you need this and that. And I mean, was it just, kind of like a push button, simple thing to make the entire insurance process easier? Or what was your thesis, or what was your idea that you were trying to impact with that technology?
yeah. So the first is I do insurance differently than most, right? Like we sell legal contracts. That's what we do, right? At the end of the day, it's sell legal contracts. And then I know I'm a party of one, but I view the insurance industry as the industry of all things fun, sexy, exciting, and just plain awesome. I know I'm on an island there, right? So,
Hmm.
but that message resonates when we're talking to our staff, our employees, or recruiting people. Like, what? Insurance is that way? Absolutely, it can be, right? And let me just, if I can take a little detour, a little rabbit hole here for a second. So, for even Elon Musk is starting his own insurance operations now, right? Of course, it's going to be successful. He has a lot of capital to throw at it, and can aggregate lots of brain share. But let's say you like math. Well, insurance needs all kind of actuary folks, right? Let's say you like detective stuff. Well, they have to investigate fraudulent claims all day, because guess what? A lot of people pay a lot of insurance premiums, and at one claim they want to get it all back, right? So some commit fraud. Not everyone, but some. Right? And there are rings that develop in that. So you have investigative skills. Let's say you like to teach, right? The industry needs people who can teach. Let's say you're an extroverted. My God, you have an unlimited income in sales in the insurance industry, right? Or if you have a bent towards management and leadership, every company has a great thirst for people to lead their rapidly growing enterprises. So I said that to say this, that this industry, like any others, can satisfy any need you have. The hangup is people see the word as insurance as boring, right? It's the minute you say it, eyes glaze over and a yawn comes out. And so I've been given the title. I did not take this title. It was given to me by multiple people as the ambassador for the insurance industry. If that's on my tombstone, that's great, because I'm speaking it, not even for my company, but for the industry overall. It's a great place for great talent to come be. So I, I probably went way off the question,
No,
Matt.
no, no, that's all right. No, no, no. I like that because I thought the exact same thing. Like coming into this, I'm like, oh, insurance, okay, that'll be interesting. But
How do we make it fun?
yeah, no, I mean, I love the approach that you're taking to it, and I agree. I mean, there are so many different facets to the insurance industry that I guess I never really took those different parts and pieces into consideration. So with on the technology side, explain what the technology is it a consumer facing thing? Is this something that you're using to make it easier for people? How does it work, or what does it do?
Yeah, all the above. And so really what started, again, as we talk about in my back on the technology piece, it's there's a lot of they call it insure tech. Technology has been brought to bear in our industry, just like in everything: insure tech, food tech, ag tech, whatever tech, right? Tech's changing, enhancing every industry. But on the insurance space, I mean, most insurance companies have 2 feet on the brake and no feet on the gas, right? They're just slow, methodical, monolithic turtles, right?
Hmm.
That's how they
Hmm.
move. There are some firms that are coming out to change that, but I'm trying to keep both feet on the gas, right? And disrupt how things are done. And the way we're doing it, from a technology standpoint, aligns really, like one of my books talks about how to beat your insurance company, right? And what we challenge people, and what our staff challenge people is, if you think about how much you're going to pay in your lifetime this is where people gloss their eyes over. Don't, just stay with me, right? Because it's insurance. Think about how much you're going to spend in your lifetime. When you're young, it's just going to be auto insurance or renter's insurance. Then you're going to need life insurance. You need home insurance, medical insurance, RV insurance, plane insurance, jet insurance, whatever. When you start aggregating those and look back over your life, you're going to spend hundreds of thousands. Most people more than 300,000, right? Dollars in their lifetime on this product called insurance. And the driver for them is so wrong because billions of dollars has been spent on advertising. Spend 15 minutes, save 15%. Well, insurance, like any other product, is you get what you pay for. I would submit to you this, that if you were to take your spouse or partner out to dinner and you took them to a steak place, you're going to pay much more than if you take them to a fast food place, right? We all agree with that. If you buy a Mercedes, you're going to pay more than a Hyundai. We all align there. Somehow, some way, we've been lied to or manipulated in the insurance marketing that it's all the same and you just get what you pay for. Well, it's not true. You get what you pay for. And if you pay the cheapest, you probably have bought a legal contract that is full of exclusions, riders, like you were saying earlier, that doesn't cover some things. And you, the consumer, bought it, but again, you think it's all the same because in insurance, they just somehow, oh, it's all the same, it's just about rate. And then our customers or policyholders found out at claims time how horrible it is. And that's how our industry gets a bad name. And so our technology, in my book, How to Beat Your Insurance Company, we tell people, think about how much you're paying over the lifetime, right? And stop just trying to bifurcate these policies and just go to the cheapest, because again, you're just buying something full of exclusions. And think holistically about something that ties into each other, dovetails into each other. And then we tell them, our customers, our agents, we call them our famously friendly humans, because that's what we're known for, our famously friendly humans. Tell them this is, premium or price. If you don't want these things, let's start taking stuff out to get it to the rate that you want. Just understand that you only get what you pay for. So we kind of have this mission, right? My books talk about how to beat the insurance company. Our famously friendly humans talk to them about educating them. And then our technology is at play in the background, that we hug the customer tighter than anybody hugs them. At every Mean Life event, we'll say, hey, you're turning 50, might be thinking about life insurance, 65, might be thinking about Medicare. Looks like you have a 16-year-old in the household. Let's get them some driver training to save you some discounts. And then the big part about our rate guard technology is we've aggregated every discount ever published in any insurance company filing with the Department of Insurance and codified them into a database. Now, it's not a consumer-facing database, it's our database. And so if I can, I'm going to go a little geek on you into the geek world. And please don't, I hope your listeners don't close their eyes, because this is the important part. And so when you think in discounts, you think, oh, I want the most discounts I can get, right? Well, most companies have a cap, some do, some don't. But let me give you some secrets in the industry, a dirty little book of secrets. I like a black book. Most people say, well, I'm a veteran, I want the veteran discount, or I want the military discount, or I want the safe driver discount. When in fact, let's say those three together, the veteran, the safe driver, and the accident-free discount, total 15%. So you're happy you got 15%. But our technology says there's a better discount. It might be 25% if you bring your home and align it with your auto, and then just take the veteran discount. Now that's at 30 versus 15. So you've saved a lot of money. But I mean, that's too noisy a message for companies to market. We have to have technology on the back end that does that. And just like a lot of people with youthful drivers may say that, well, they're a good student, I want that. When in fact, that may only be a 5% discount. But if you attach a telematics, which is a pay by mile app, and what sees how they're driving, you could get up to 30%, right? But again, it's such a boring subject. Consumers don't want to spend that much time. Like you and I have spent more time dialoguing and engaging than most people. They want to spend 10 minutes and save 15%, right?
Yeah, right.
But there's a way to beat the insurance company. Of course, I would say it starts with my book and then uses RIGHTSURE on our technology, but you just have to be disciplined and methodical about it, and not apply that wrong mentality of it's all the same, it's just about price, because that exists in no other industry, and it absolutely does not exist in our industry either. So that's my ambassador hat talking, right? Let's re-educate every consumer. So
Yeah,
A lot of
that's
words there, man.
no. This is good, and it's interesting too. And I completely agree. You know, a lot of people may not necessarily look at insurance when you look at insurance as being, you know, as important as what it is. But when you add it up over the course of your lifetime, you know, that is a heck of a chunk of money. And obviously, if you get involved in other businesses or other things, you know, you have other policies that come into effect as well. So I'm going to use myself as a personal situation, and I'm curious, you know, how you would approach something like this using the technology. Um, so, you know, when you're applying for insurance, you're looking for insurance, you know, you don't know what the future is going to hold, right? So, as the listeners know, we invest in large multifamily apartment buildings. So we've got one building. It's in Shaker Heights, Ohio. We have a couple of different buildings in that area. So we've got quite a number of units, but we've got one building in particular, and this just happened, call it 2-3 months ago, something like that, right? So it's a brick building, and there's an attached garage, and there's a parapet wall that's on top of the garage. So it's like it's probably 8 feet tall, let's say, some 7 feet tall,
Sure.
something like that. Yeah. One night at like 2:30 in the morning, boom, you know, this big explosion, right? Or everybody thought that it was an explosion. Uh, Everybody woke up in the apartment and started calling our service manager, you know, hey, something just blew up. You got to get over here. You know, so when he came over there, like 100 feet of the brick facing fell off of the wall, right? So that fell down on top of the roof of the garage. So you know, we're talking thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds of brick at this point that just, you know, fell over on top of the roof. And there's a retaining wall, a retaining wall that's behind that. So, you know, right away we called the insurance company, and they send out their inspector. And in the midst of all of this, there was another apartment at the beginning of the year that had a roof collapse in its parking garage. So the city was very sensitive, because this is, you know, sort of been in the local news here. This is, you know, in my local area. So this roof that fell, you know, was in the news. The city was taking all the precautions and basically said, you guys can't park any garage. You have to evacuate the parking garage. You can park in our parking lot, you know, right next door. But we need the sign off from an engineer saying that the structure wasn't damaged, right? So in order to do that, we had to clean up the roof, and we were trying to find out whether, you know, we were trying to get approval from the insurance company to be able to, you know, handle this claim. So long story short, we found the contractor. They cleaned it up. They had the inspector come out, or the engineer come out. Everything's okay. We got the cars back in. And then, you know, we went through all of that in probably about a week or so. And then we went back to the insurance company. We say, okay, here's the bill for the cleanup. And we're waiting to get bills for, you know, for the replacement of the wall. Right. So they said, well, you know, we're not sure if this is going to be covered yet or not. So going around in circles with them, they basically are claiming that, and I forget the exact terminology, but it wasn't like an instantaneous act, right? So it wasn't like a fire came through and you know, broke this wall down. It wasn't a flood that caused this wall to fall down. The engineers have come to the conclusion that it was essentially ice that had, or water that had gotten down in there, then frozen, and, you know, pushed out a little bit, and then the next year it did it again and again and again. So it happened over a period of time. So because it wasn't an instantaneous act, they're saying that they're not going to cover it. So, but the question, you know, long story to kind of set up the question, coming back to, you know, how do you predict, you know, for something that you don't necessarily know? Like, I would have never known that wall was going to collapse when we were looking for the insurance, but how do you go about making sure that you have the right type of coverage for what you need? And then, you know, I guess there's always going to be those outliers that, you know, you're not going to, you know, be able to forecast. I don't know. Any thoughts on
Yeah,
that?
Absolutely. We could spend another whole subject on this, right? And so first of all, let's define for your listeners what we're talking about. In your space, what we call that habitational risk, right? So you're in the habitational risk space. And of course, those policies come as varied as there are cars and food choices, right? They come really cheap with lots of exclusions, and they come with what we would call all risk. So everything's kind of covered, which some people use the term full coverage. That's not a real term, right? But what you are hearing is fact, right? If there is some seepage or damage that's occurring over time, there is a duty, an obligation of the owner to be aware of this and take preventative measures to prohibit this, right? It's certainly, again, I don't know the policy language and exclusions of this, and I'm not trying to walk away from it. It's worth opening the policy, reading it, which no one wants to do, and figuring out, and then saying, well, how do I get an all risk policy so that this isn't a problem in the future? And I would say this to anyone shopping for insurance: stop! Exclamation point, underline circle, stop just judging it by the cheapest price. Start asking sophisticated questions, because insurance people spend a lot of time studying to be professionals. They're not all just crazy salespeople. They have to know this stuff. Start asking. So stop just judging price. Start asking important questions like, just tell me what's excluded. Talk to me about the exclusions, because that's what you're buying, right? What you don't want to find out later, right? Because there are exclusions in everything, right? I thought you were going to tell me they didn't cover all of the cars damaged for some reason, right? Because if there's ever coverage at play, then the insurance company doesn't have a duty to pay that. And so I thought you were going to say all these cars, they should have had comp and collision coverage, so that's the duty of the insurance company. But yours is this. It's worth pushing back on this particular case and saying, hey, can we get another set of eyes on this? Because I don't believe this was a long-term neglect on our part. We had no knowledge, no warning of any seepage or damage. And so it's frustrating. First of all, it's a blight on our industry when these kind of exclusions come up. I would ask for an arbitration. That's a big word. It's like, so you can go to a third-party arbitrator to have them take a look. You have that right in most policies, and the insurance company is going to honor that right.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. So, so what would, like you mentioned, ask sophisticated questions, and I like the what's not included. Are there any warning signs or something like? I don't know. Again, you don't know what you don't know until you know it. So, are there any things that you would say like, are sort of no go, don't accept that kind of policy? Or, again, I wouldn't have known, like, if it wasn't an instantaneous act, I'm like, okay, well, if we don't have a fire, or if we have a fire, then we're good. But, I would have never even put this together. Right. So,
Right.
so like I said, you don't know what you don't know until you know it. So,
Yeah.
how do you predict that you have the right, the right policy, for your situation?
No, it's very intentional and get the right agent, right? So again, online is proliferating, right? I mean, everyone wants to quote online because they don't want to talk to a person and be sold by someone, right? But I would say an insurance agent is much like a doctor and attorney. They've got specialized knowledge and ask. There's two quick things. One, you said the fire, and you'll find this interesting maybe in our space. Whenever you see these a lot of hurricanes or floods, all of a sudden you see fires break out, and you're like, how is there a fire? People know flood may not be covered. Fire, that's a covered peril. Oh my God, a fire started, right? So there's a lot of fraud when you turn on the TV and you're like, it's flooded, there's a hurricane, how do all these fires start? Hit the gas line, torch it. That happens, right? But we have investigators that are very aware of that. And then for the second part, let's just make it easier for the vast majority of people, because habitational is a little specific. Let's just take your home. You're like, how do you know? I don't want to violate any antitrust things and name certain companies that are full of exclusions, because there are, and that's why they're the cheapest, obviously, right? Not always the cheapest is bad, but as a majority, we all know, again, if you're going to eat fast food, that's different than a steak, right? You get what you pay for. But let's just make it easy, because most people will have a home policy. It'll be the most important asset that they own. And these are some things they may not be aware of. First of all, in a home policy, flood is never covered, right? Flood is completely separate. And the government's done a pretty good job of educating people on that. Not everyone's aware, and they find out at claims time, what do you mean water's not covered, right? Sewage and water backup is not automatically covered. What does that mean? You go on vacation, your toilet overflows, you come in and your house is full of your own excrement, sorry, and you find out sewage and water backup is excluded. You have to buy that back and add that on. Most of your guns or your wife's jewelry has a limit. Sometimes it's as low as $2,500. If you buy a really cheap policy, it may be $500. And so, again, these are legal contracts. They're full of exclusions based upon the price you pay. And so to answer your question, is how do you know that? It is figure out what these sublimits are. You don't have to be a geek about it, but ask your agent sophisticated question like this. What are the limits on my wife's jewelry, my gun collection, my artwork? I have a real quick horror story of a customer that had significant amount of artwork. The cheapest piece was several $100,000. Of course, assumed incorrectly that this $1 million house with all this artwork, it was just going to be covered. Well, artwork has limits of, let's just say, 5,000. So when their arm gets put through it or it disappears, there's no coverage for theft or it burns. There's a limit, let's just say of 5,000. They have 500,000. You can see where lawsuits are going to happen, but these legal contracts are pretty solid, man. So again, we could geek out about this forever, but it is caveat emptor, buyer beware, and stop just basing it on price. That's my ambassador hat for today.
I love it. I love it. Jeff, if people want to learn more about you, your products, your books, your services, what would be the best way to reach out and get in touch?
Yeah, the simplest, easy way is my personal website, jeffarnold.com. It's Jeff Arnold, just like it sounds.com.
Love it. Jeff, thank you for the time and insights. And I can't stress this enough. I never really thought of insurance as being that big of a burden in your lifetime. So, they always say like your house is going to be one of the most expensive things that you ever make a purchase in, but insurance is probably pretty close right behind it. So certainly deserves that attention.
Awesome, man. Hey, I had a wonderful time on your show today. Thanks so much for inviting me.
No problem.